Good morning and welcome. I hope you're enjoying Thanksgiving weekend, and we're here today with the Thanksgiving sermon from Black Rock Baptist Church for Thanksgiving Sunday, October the 9th of 2022. I want to talk to you this morning from Psalm 131. 131. The art of giving thanks is one thing that separates man from the animals. To receive a gift and say thank you is one of the noblest things a man can do. There's nothing small, there's nothing trivial about it. To say thank you is to acknowledge that we have received something that we didn't earn, we probably didn't deserve it. Happy is the person who understands that all of life is a gift from God, and that life itself is the ultimate gift. That's why the Bible says in everything, give thanks. When we can't do anything else, we can always be grateful. As someone has said, if you can't be thankful for what you've received, be thankful for what you've escaped. With that in mind, I want us to focus on Psalm 131 this Thanksgiving Sunday. And as you know, the psalmist David was a poet as well as a musician. And if you read through the Psalms, you'll notice that nearly half of the Psalms were written by David. Psalm 131 is one of the Pilgrim Psalms. The heading calls it a song of ascents. That means it was part of a group of psalms which were sung by the Hebrew pilgrims as they made their way up the mountain toward the city of Jerusalem for one of their annual feasts and festivals. 15 of the psalms are grouped together. 15 of these Psalms of Ascents, or Pilgrim Psalms, 15 of them are grouped together. Psalm 120 through Psalm 134 are all Psalms of Ascent. All except one are really quite short. Exactly the kind of songs you would expect travelers to sing as they marched along together. The Pilgrim Psalms are like the choruses that we sometimes sing in worship services. Their purpose is the same, to prepare the heart to worship God. Now, it's possible that you've never really noticed Psalm 131 before. It's only 3 short verses. So you might tend to overlook this psalm as being, well, not very important. But that would be a big mistake, because this little psalm by David is a jewel. Charles Spurgeon said that this psalm is one of the shortest to read, but one of the longest to learn. Each of the 3 verses in Psalm 131 reveals an important quality of thanksgiving and thankfulness. And so that's what we're going to look at this Thanksgiving Sunday. The psalm begins with the words, "My heart is not proud, O Lord. My eyes are not haughty." Not many of us would begin a prayer that way. That kind of sounds odd, as if perhaps David is maybe bragging about his humility. And that's the quality that's revealed in this verse. Verse 1 reveals humility, this quality that's an important quality of being thankful. It's always tricky to talk about humility. How do you know when you're truly humble? Come to think of it, if you are truly humble, will you even know it? It's been well said that humility is a virtue which, when you think you have it, you've lost it. Let's be very honest with ourselves on this point. We live in a culture that puts a very low value on humility. They don't give out merit badges for humility. From the moment we enter into the earth or enter into this world, we are urged to get ahead, to climb the ladder, to look out for number one, to win through intimidation if necessary, to prove our success by the car we drive, the home we live in, the clothes we wear, and the friends we hang around with. I'm sure you've seen those t-shirts that say the one who dies with the most toys wins. When I see that, I always want to say, well, so what? Dead people don't play with toys. While it may be true that the meek shall inherit the earth, it doesn't seem to be happening. We all feel the pinch. Not long ago, a friend of mine told me that he doesn't particularly like Christmas. In fact, he said, I hate Christmas because giving gifts has become a game where your love is measured by how much you spend on the gift. It's a sad commentary on the way that we live. David goes on here to describe humility in terms of how he looked at his own limitations. He writes, I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. The Living Bible simply translates that this way. It says, I don't pretend to be a know-it-all. David is saying there are a lot of things about this universe that are far beyond my meager ability to understand. I don't worry about those things. I don't try to figure them out. Humility in this context simply means that you don't run the world. You don't have all the answers. You know that you have limits. That last one is a hard one for a lot of people. The idea that we have limits. It's sort of a trendy new age type idea to talk about unlimited potential and untapped resources within. The truth is, our potential is very limited, and the only untapped resources are the ones we discover when we come to the end and we admit that we are limited, but God is not limited. I think David would agree entirely. Happy is the man who knows his limits, and within those limits does the very best that he can. So the first quality for being thankful is humility. Verse 2 brings before us a second quality that is very useful to us at Thanksgiving. It is the quality of simplicity. He writes, but I have stilled and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. The picture here is one that really, well, I guess only a mother can fully comprehend. Breakfast, lunch, and supper come from the same place. A child is born for a long time. He looks to his mother for that source of nourishment. That nourishment comes from one place. When he's hungry, he cries. His mother knows exactly what he wants and what to do, and her milk satisfies him, and he goes back off to sleep again. But the day comes when he has to learn to take a bottle. That's not a happy time. He fights against it, he pouts, he screams, all to no avail. What's happened to Mom? She used to be his friend, now she's his enemy. And if Mom has a heart at all, she cries too. Because from now on, things are going to be different. She will feed him, but never again the same way. When the battle is over, when the tears have stopped, when he learns to eat with his brothers and sisters at the table, then the child comes and lays his head on his mother's breast, not in order to be fed, but just because he loves her, just because he wants to be near her. He comes because he wants to be with his mother. Here's the truth. Unless a mother weans her child, he will never grow up. He'll be a baby all the days of his life. Though it may seem hard, and though the child misunderstands what's happening, if a mother truly loves her child, she will not stop until the job is finished. The child is weaned. And when the job is finally done, the child no longer begs for that which he once found indispensable. Once he could not live without his mother's milk. Now he no longer needs it. To be weaned is to have something removed from your life which you thought you couldn't live without. David is saying, I've come to the place where the things I thought I had to have, I don't need them anymore. Now my soul is quiet and content. Most of us live on the opposite principle. We base our contentment upon how many of our needs are met. Unfortunately, it's hard to reach a place where all our needs are constantly met, and so by that standard, it's hard to ever be content. It's hard to ever be happy, to be thankful. If contentment is measured by how much of the world's goods you possess, who can ever say I have enough? Maybe you've heard the story of the billionaire who was asked when he was going to stop working. When are you going to retire? He says, when I make enough money. How much money is enough? The answer came back, just one more dollar. Just one more dollar. When you realize that to be true, you can only conclude one thing. You've chosen to put your confidence in the things of the world, not in God. That's the way most of us figure contentment. In our hearts, we think we'd be happy if we had a new car, a new job, a new dress, a new husband, a new wife. And since life is hardly ever that simple, we stay frustrated when we ought to be happy. No wonder Thanksgiving kind of whizzes on by. No wonder Christmas becomes a nightmare. No wonder we are never satisfied. Instead of being weaned from the world, we're welded to the world. Or maybe I should say, we're wedded to the world. In any case, our soul is anything but quiet and anything but peaceful. It was Jesus who said, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:3. What was he talking about? Was it not a faith that is childlike in its simplicity? That, I think, is what Jesus was talking about when he said, unless you become like a little child. It is a faith which is childlike in its simplicity. There is something our children can teach us at Thanksgiving. They can teach us what it means to have a simple and uncomplicated trust in God. How does God go about weaning us from our dependence on the things of the world? I ran across a three-part answer to that question from a Bible commentator. He wrote these things over a century ago, but they're still relevant today. The commentator said that first, God makes the things of the world bitter to us. Second, he removes, one by one, the things on which we depend. And third, he gives us something better. In the end, we find that we no longer need the things we used to think we couldn't do without. And our walk with God is stronger than ever before. It's a great advance in spiritual understanding to be able to say, I got nothing I asked for, but I received everything I hoped for. That's what simplicity is all about. There's a third principle to be added to humility and simplicity. It's the principle of integrity. Verse 3, David writes, O Israel, put your hope in the Lord both now and forevermore. Integrity. The word hope in Hebrew means, first of all, to wait, but it also means to wait expectantly. The concept is very close to our English word confidence. An expanded definition would say that the concept is an expanded definition would be to wait on something because you know the thing that you're waiting for is going to happen because the person you're waiting on is trustworthy. That's what this little word hope, that's a kind of an expanded definition of that word in the Hebrew. David says, you have a choice to make. Either you choose to live like everyone else or you choose to wait upon the Lord. Once a child is weaned, the apron strings have been cut. The child comes to rest on his mother's lap, not because he wants something, but because he wants to be near his mother. In the same way, God weans us from our dependence upon the things of this world so that we will not be bribed into trusting him. What credit is it to us if we trust God because we have a house and a job, a happy home, a mate, a secure future, good health? What will you do when you lose your health, your job? When you lose your home and your family and your security, your connections? When life tumbles in, what have you got then? That's what integrity is all about. It's choosing to put your confidence in God alone. It's believing that he has all the answers to the questions that you can barely understand. It's coming to the place where you don't measure your spirituality by your prosperity. It's finding rest in your soul because you've discovered that the things you used to crave, those things you used to think you needed, well, they're not so important anymore. When you realize that to be true, you can conclude only one thing: you've chosen to put your confidence in God alone. And that's a choice we must all make. There's a lot to ponder in these three little verses of Psalm 131. Now you know why Spurgeon said this psalm is one of the shortest to read, but one of the longest to learn. Humility, simplicity, and integrity. We need those three qualities every day of the year, and especially if we are to truly be a thankful people this Thanksgiving weekend. You know, it's traditional in Thanksgiving sermons to ask people to make a list of their blessings. With the year that is quickly passing, we might think that there's not been a lot of blessings to be thankful for. But I'm going to ask you today to make a non-traditional Thanksgiving list. When we make a list of our blessings, we normally begin and end with our material blessings. That's good, that's proper, but it doesn't exhaust the subject. In the spirit of Psalm 131, I want to ask you to sit down sometime this holiday weekend and make a list, a very personal list, a private list. A list of the things from which you've been weaned in the past year. That is, make a list of the things which maybe through hardship, through suffering, God has taken away from you. And in the last year, the last 12 months, and now as a result, your faith is stronger and it's deeper. And now your walk with God means more than it ever did before. I want you to list those things you used to think you couldn't live without. But now you know you can. It could be a dream you had for your life that consumed all your energy, but God has taken that from you. And you have found that, yes, I can still live without that. It may be a relationship. It may be an idea, something you owned, a personal possession. Maybe it's a promotion to a new job that you just had to have, or a new possession to set all your hopes on. It may be a person around whom you built your whole life, and now that person is gone from your life. It was difficult to let go, but you did. And now you're stronger for it. It may be something you fought for, you strived for, you lived for, you worked for, and when you finally got it, you found that it wasn't as important as you thought it was. On your list, there may be things that are quite good, quite proper in and of themselves. Most of the things on your list will not be bad or evil or sinful. It's anything that has happened in your life in the past year about which you can now say, God has shown me that I don't need to have that to be happy. I don't need to have that to be thankful. Be thankful for the things you no longer have to have. The song says, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. The surprise is not just in the outward material blessings of the past year. It's also in the times of suffering and pain and difficulty, which seem to be for no good purpose, but in the end turned out to be blessings in disguise. Because that too is the goodness and the grace of God. Thanksgiving. We ought to be the most thankful people on the face of the earth. May our days be marked by humility, simplicity, and integrity. Let's be thankful not only for the things we have, but also for the things we no longer have to have. And as God's people, may we hope and trust in the Lord more and more each day. God bless. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Join us through the week as we continue our short devotionals, and we'll be again focusing upon the topic of Thanksgiving for those short devotionals. And until we meet again, let's continue to exchange prayers daily. God bless.